with just a short Zoom tutorial. I know that so many of us are familiar with Zoom at this point, but I just want to make sure that people know how to navigate just in case you haven't experienced much Zoom in this past year. So one thing is that if you're not speaking, like I just said, go ahead and put yourself on mute. And that's not because we don't want to hear what you have to say. It's just that there's often background noise. I know that there's often a lot of background noise, such as barking and meowing in my house. So I try and stay on mute when I'm not speaking. If you need to raise your hand, because we'll be doing some questions and answers later on. Now, it may be different on different devices, but the way that I do it on my device and most devices is that you bring down your cursor to the bottom and a bunch of little icons will pop up. And then you click on reactions. And then there's a button there that says raise your hand. So you can do it that way. See, I just raised my hand. And then I think I can take my hand down again, lower hand, yeah. So you raise your hand and you lower your hand at the very bottom. And also if you particularly love something, there's other icons there too, like thumbs up and clapping and hearts and celebrations and all that stuff. So feel free to use your icons freely. The chat is open and we'll be saving the chat at the end of the, or somewhere during this, this gathering. The other thing is that Marianne and Aslinor are recording this. So if for some reason you don't want to be seen or if you don't want to be heard, we just need to let you know in advance that it is being recorded, okay? Later on, and I'll go over this when we get there, we're going to go into smaller groups and we call those breakout rooms. And you'll be getting a notice on your screen that says enter breakout room number 3 or whatever it is. And you click yes on that. You click the button that indicates that you're going to a breakout room. And that means you'll be in a small group where your voice can be heard. And that's where you unmute yourself and you can speak about what's up for you. One more thing is that if you need to take a bio break, use the restroom or get a drink of water or what have you, we don't really have a break built into this 2-hour program, but just go ahead and do it. And if you're going to carry your phone with you, go ahead and take your video off because there are certain things we don't need to see or hear. And it's distracting sometimes when you're carrying your phone around, you know, if you're doing stuff. So I think that's it. Are there any questions about the Zoom tutorial? So you can practice by raising your hand. Don't see any. Okay, good. The other reason, by the way, to raise your hand. Oh, Gina, did you raise your hand on purpose?
Did you say raise your hand?
Yes. No, I said if you have any questions, raise your hand. Okay, no questions. Great, perfect. Okay, so so now there are no more questions. It's my pleasure to introduce our participants today. Marianne and Aslinor, can you go ahead and just wave and maybe unmute yourself for a minute and speak so you pop onto the main screen, okay?
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome everyone. It is so beautiful to see you here.
Yes, thank you. So by the way, we do have several screens going. So when you're speaking, you'll pop onto the main screen. So just a few words about Marianne and Aslinor so we can go ahead and jump in and get started. Their bio is just amazing and impressive. I want to start by saying that I met them in India. And they were a group of us young people, and by young I mean 62 and under, they really are young, that would go off into these meditation huts and sing together. We sang all kinds of songs from all different faiths, and it was really super wonderful in India. So anyway, Marianne and Aslinor have taught Sufism to many audiences, and they also host spiritual journeys called Anar Journeys. They have both written books on Islam mysticism, and other topics. Aslinor grew up in a family of dervishes, and Marianne is a freelance journalist, and they are also providing the music for us, and they'll speak a little bit more about that when we get there. They're both musicians. I also want to talk a little bit about Hugh Rose, and Hugh, can you go ahead and just unmute and say hello so you pop on the main screen? Did you? Yeah, go ahead and unmute. There you go.
Hello?
There you are. Hi.
Yes, here I am. Hello.
Yes. So that's my husband, Hugh Rose, and he's going to be participating in some of the poetry reading, and he's also an accomplished actor on stage, voice, TV, and film. But he's also traveled extensively in the Middle East and Europe and India. And several years ago, he was fortunate to attend with Sema in Konya, Turkey, at the celebration of the 70th anniversary of Rumi's death.
700th
Sorry,
anniversary
700. Sorry, thank
of
you.
the death of Jalaluddin Rumi
The
in
death of Jalaluddin Rumi.
1973.
Right. Yes. Okay. So anyway, one of the reasons we're getting together in this gathering, and one of the reasons I invited Marian and Aslanur to speak to us, and Hugh to support it with his poetry, is that part of Marian and Aslanur's passion is to seek to reclaim Islam from some of the traumatic images that are portrayed in the media on a fairly regular basis. And they are here to help all of us, help people all over the world understand the true nature of Islam, which is kindness, devotion, and generosity, and so much more. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our friends, Marian and Aslinor, and I'm going to go on mute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Bonnie, for this very generous introduction, and also for introducing us to the metaphysics of Zoom. So we're now going from the metaphysics of Zoom to the metaphysics of Rumi. And it's wonderful to see so many familiar and actually old and new friends, but all of us, I think, when we look from a Sufi perspective, we already know each other. We just need to remember. So it's beautiful to just remember together and see all of you here in this circle. I think we are quite an international group, and that's also the beauty of it. And happy Easter to all of you.
Happy Easter.
So I would like to start, or we would like to start, with a moment of silence, just to center ourselves. Maybe take 1 or 2 deep breaths. And arrive in the moment. Open our ears to be receptive, and also our heart, so we can listen with the ear of the heart. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. So with this prayer, the opening chapter of the Quran, the Fatiha, we all welcome you warmly to this evening on Rumi. And can you all hear me fine? Okay, great. So I would like to start with a little story. I'm taking you now from wherever you are to Balkh, a little town in the north of what is today Afghanistan. And it was in about 2 years ago, I'm sitting in the seat of a Toyota. We are driving through a barren landscape, the outline of the Hindu Kush mountains at the distance, and entering the city of Balkh. Well, city, maybe you could call it a town. It's quite a small place. And there are some big mud brick walls, showing the place where there used to be the gates of the city. And there is a sign that says, "Welcome to the city of Rumi." We get to the main square, there's a roundabout, and it's around noontime, middle of Ramadan. So if any of you have been to a Muslim country in Ramadan, you probably know that there's not much happening at noontime in the middle of Ramadan. So all the shops are closed. Some vegetable sellers are very tired pushing their carts across the street. Most of the shops, some of the merchants are just dozing behind their counters. And in my seat, I'm sitting in the car and I'm trying to look as Afghan as possible. I have my Afghan clothes on. And I try to keep a low profile because I was told that people in this town, in Balkh, they don't really like strangers. And even someone told me that some of those people might be sympathizers of the Taliban. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm telling myself I'm here to visit the birth house of Rumi. So I have a good intention, so there should be nothing wrong. We turn off the main road and we enter a sandy track that leads again to a barren field. There is a soccer ground, some children playing soccer. And when they see me approaching in the car, they wave. And then I see this ruin in the middle of nowhere. I'm going to try to share a photo with you so that you can imagine what I'm talking about. Yes. Are you seeing it? Okay, great. So this is what Afghans say is the birth house of Rumi. Not much left. It's disputed among the scholars. Some people say, no, this was something that the locals made up. This is not actually the real birthplace, but it has a symbolic value. And I enter this structure with my Afghan clothes. This is how I look. And I stand in the middle, and it looks a little bit like a beehive. And the ceiling has long come down, so there is basically just a hole in the roof. I'm looking up into the sky, trying to imagine little Rumi here as a child in this house. It's a little bit difficult to imagine because the place is very hot, it's dusty. There is sheep manure lying everywhere, so there's also smell. And so I can't really get into that mood. And I have this moment of realization telling myself, well, Rumi has long ago left this place. And I feel even more so when I go to the main mosque of Balkh. This is the old mosque of Balkh, built a few centuries after Rumi's birth. And this is just after the Friday prayer. So you see all the men in their local clothes leaving the Friday prayer. And it's somehow a very orthodox, masculine atmosphere. So I'm still trying to blend in, but I can't really feel Rumi. I can't grasp Rumi. This is the bazaar in the afternoon. So some colorful clothes here on display. And this is one of the main squares of Mazar-e-Sharif. It's the next biggest city close to Balkh. And here you can see a mosaic of Rumi. This is the way Rumi is traditionally portrayed. And you see it here on top of a fruit market. And this is the dome of a cultural center, also in Mazar-e-Sharif. very beautifully with the whirling dervishes that come from the tradition of Rumi. So after this experience of looking for Rumi in Balkh, in his birthplace, as some people say, I come across this quote by Rumi. He says, "I am not the physical presence you observe, but I am the pleasure and the happiness you sense inside as you hear my name and my words. If you feel such a pleasure, treasure the moment and express gratitude, for that is me." So I think what I learned after this visit is that Rumi, yes, we talk about the historical Rumi, and we might even be able to visit the place, maybe where he was born. But Rumi is much more than that. He's much more than a historical figure, much more than this physical body that lived for a certain amount of time. He says, actually, I am that pleasure, that happiness which you sense inside as you hear my name and my words. So it's really pointing at this this universal essence and joy inside all of us. My first experience of reading Rumi's poetry was in a class in Tehran, Iran, when I was studying the Persian language. And the Persian language has one of the richest collections of spiritual poetry on earth, if not the richest. Rumi is only the most famous of those poets, but you can name a whole list of other poets. So Hafiz, you've probably all heard of Hafiz. Attar, the author of a book called The Conference of the Birds. Sadi, who lived in Shiraz together with Hafiz. Nizami, Omar Khayyam, Jami. So there's a whole list of poets and really mystics that emerged in this geography. I want to speak a little bit, just give you an outline of Rumi's life. Rumi was born in the year 1207 as Jalaluddin Muhammad. So he was not called Rumi back then. Jalaluddin Muhammad. Jalaluddin in Arabic means the splendor of religion. Din is religion and Jalal means splendor. Muhammad, as we all know, is the name of the prophet. Jalaluddin Muhammad. And the area where he was born, today's Balkh, was one of the flourishing centers of Islamic culture, which was then later destroyed by the Mongols. But in that time, there were a lot of saints, there was a lot of science also being practiced. Ibn Sina, better known as Avicenna in the West, he was born also in that area. And Rumi's father himself was also a mystic. His name was Bahauddin, and he was a local preacher, 58 years old when Rumi was born. And he was in fact Rumi's first teacher. As a child, he received his first initiation into the Sufi path and into the mystical aspect of Islam through his teacher. And his mother, Mo'mene Khatun, unfortunately, we don't know much about her. As it is always the case in history, especially in medieval history, it's the same with Europe. We don't know much about the women. So it's always the men's history that is being recorded generally. So it's unfortunately the same as the case with Rumi's mother. We just know her name. Rumi also had one brother and a sister who stayed behind in Balkh when the family migrated. So Rumi was around 4 years old when the family moved to Samarkand, about 200 kilometers to the north. I forgot I'm speaking to an American audience, so that would be 200 kilometers. Must be something like 120 miles, 130 miles. And the actual exodus of Rumi's family began when Rumi was 12 years old, 12, 13 years old. So he was just a teenager when his father decided to leave that area and move to the west. And there are different theories why this happened. Some people say it's because the Mongols were approaching, and Rumi's father could already foresee the destruction and the chaos and the terror that the Mongol hordes under the leadership of Genghis Khan would bring to the area. And it was really a vast destruction that happened. Some other people say that probably Rumi's father was not very happy with his work in that area. He wanted to have a better position as a preacher in a mosque in the West. So what do I mean by West? They moved from today's Afghanistan through Iran, through Baghdad, today's Iraq. They went to Mecca to do the pilgrimage, the Hajj, and they moved into Anatolia. Anatolia, the ancient name for today's Turkey. And they settled, first of all, in a city called Karaman, which is in the center of Turkey. And then when Rumi was around 22 years old, he was already married by then and had 2 kids. They moved to Konya. And Konya is where Rumi would spend the rest of his life. So this experience of migration, of moving, of leaving your homeland behind, this experience of being uprooted, this exodus is very important in Rumi's, let's say, formation, in what shaped him. And it's also a metaphor really for the migration, or for our very essential condition as human beings, as being far away from home and as trying to come back home. So Rumi experienced this actually physically as a child, moving away from his birth town, and then of course also spiritually, as striving to come back to his real home. When Rumi's father died, let me first say a few words about Konya. Konya back then was a flourishing cosmopolitan city. So it was a city where you could hear different languages on the street. Of course, Turkish, but also Arabic, Persian, Greek, because there were quite a lot of Greek Christians. It was the so-called Seljuk Empire, an Islamic empire, but for many centuries before it was a Byzantine, ruled by the Byzantine Empire, so Greek Christians. And also you would find Armenian Christians. So a very cosmopolitan mix of different religious groups. So Rumi comes with his family into this environment, and his father becomes a preacher by the order of the court, the Seljuk court at that time. And he has a good position and he starts teaching. And shortly after a few years, he passes away. So Rumi, now without a father, he needs a new teacher. So one of his father's closest students starts teaching him and sends him to Syria for his religious education. So back in the day, it was very important if you want to become a preacher, and it was clear for the young 22-year-old Rumi that he would follow in the footsteps of his father. So he had to see, first of all, he had to get a religious education. And what I mean by religious education is really theology. So Rumi became a learned scholar of the Islamic sciences, Islamic law, how to interpret the Quran, the exegesis, the scholarship of the Hadith, which is the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, one of the important sources for Muslim jurisprudence and Muslim law. So all these things Rumi had to learn as a young man. And he returned to Konya as an expert in all these disciplines. And he started teaching in 4 different religious schools. and attracted all different kinds of people, but mostly very simple folks, tradesmen, artisans, merchants, even Christian followers. So quite a few of his students were Greek, Armenian, and that was because he really taught Islam, even at that point, before meeting his master Shams, he taught Islam from a very inclusive, mystical perspective. Now, the most important event in Rumi's life, when he was about 37 years old, is his encounter with Shams. Shams came to Konya in the year 1244, and Shams was in some ways the complete opposite of Rumi. Rumi was an established scholar. He had his position, he had a reputation, everyone in Konya knew him. If he walked through the streets of Konya, people would pay their respects and, and open the way for him to pass. But Shams was different. Shams, he always kept a low profile. He was a wandering dervish. He didn't fit anywhere. He didn't like to be seen. And he was someone who was traveling from one city to the other city, listening to many teachers, but never attaching himself to any Sufi orders. So when those two met, and there are many different legends around the first encounter of how Rumi and Shams met, but basically when they met, it was love at first sight. There was something really that connected them. And Shams, being a very perceptive and very intuitive person, immediately on this first meeting recognized the readiness and receptivity of Rumi, the spiritual maturity of Rumi. So he knew that he had something to impart, something to impart to Rumi. And by the way, we also need to say Shams had a deep knowledge also of the Quran, of the Islamic tradition. He had a deep love for the Prophet Muhammad. But at the same time, he was a free spirit and he believed in experience over knowledge. So not the kind of religion of the books or the kind of religion that you get taught from your parents and you just copy and paste whatever you learn and imitate. No. I only believe in what I really experience. So I only believe in God if I can experience him. So that was Shams' background. So Shams and Rumi, in a way, they became perfect mirrors to each other. Shams found in Rumi someone he could finally transmit his knowledge and his experience to. And Rumi found in Shams the missing piece in his life. So it was really a relationship of, from on both ways. Not only Shams being Rumi's teacher, but they both had things to give to each other. Sometimes also you have this beautiful imagery of Shams being the sun, because Shams is actually the Arabic word for sun. Shams means sun in Arabic. And Rumi being the moon, reflecting the light of Shams. And there is a famous story that one day Rumi was sitting by a pond with his books. And Shams came and he asked, what are you doing? And he pointed at the books. And Rumi retorted, what do you know? Shams took the books and he threw them into the water. Rumi was, of course, shocked. And he looked at Shams, and Shams just made a quick movement of his hand, and the books again emerged from the water, completely dry, unharmed. And Shams looked at Rumi, what do you know? So you find many of these kinds of legends, and we can't really be sure if they actually happened, because what happens often with these saints is that a lot of miracle stories around Sufi saints, they are created, but they often carry a very important symbolic message, and that's what's really at the heart. So here the message being really to throw away all those intellectual ideas and concepts, the book knowledge, to really empty yourself, to empty your cup so you can receive divine inspiration. So that was basically what Shams was trying to teach Rumi. Of course, when Shams and Rumi were spending so much time with each other, they say that they closed themselves into a room for months. And you can imagine, because Rumi had a group of students around him, that the students, they got very jealous. Why isn't he spending any more time with us? You know, he's supposed to be teaching us. And rumors started circulating in Konya. And at some point, this jealousy became so strong that Shams left Konya. And you might ask yourself, well, they are Rumi's students. Why are they gossiping? Shouldn't they be a little bit more mature? And there's actually another nice story here. Once Rumi was asked by someone in the town, in the city, I've seen your students and they are all very rough and very bad-mannered people. So how comes your students you surround yourself with such people? And then Rumi replied, well, if they were already complete human beings, I wouldn't have accepted them as my students. It's precisely because of their incompletion and because of their flaws that I'm teaching them, and we have this community together. So, of course, Rumi was devastated when Shams left, his teacher and his closest friend. And he sent his son to fetch Shams, to find Shams for him. And Shams had left for Syria, and actually even luckily his son was able to find Shams and bring him back. Shams returned to Konya, and again for a few months they were together, Rumi and Shams, and Rumi was of course happy again for that union. But again, the jealousy started, the gossips became more again, the community fell apart, there were different groups. There are even some theories that some of the students, they plotted for murdering Shams. So again, Shams left. He couldn't bear it. He couldn't bear it, or maybe he was trying to teach Rumi to grow up and to be without, to become complete by himself without the presence of a master. And this time, really, Rumi could not find him again. So it was the final separation of Rumi and Shams. And this second absence, first of all, it was a big crisis for Rumi. Again, he retreated for a long time. He didn't want to see anyone. But what happened was actually that a deep catharsis was taking place in Rumi in that process, through this separation, through the absence from his dearest mirror, his dearest friend. And he found his master in himself through this catharsis, the mystic union within himself. So the pain of separation, which is one of the important recurring themes in Rumi's poetry, the pain of separation from the divine, from the master, from the beloved, God being the beloved, was really a catalyst for his spiritual maturation, for becoming a complete human being, as you say in Sufism. So with this pain of separation, Rumi started composing poetry. He was not doing that before. He was already familiar with poetry, but he never composed his own poetry before the separation from Shams. So out of this experience and this catharsis, all this poetry just started pouring out of him. And they say that some of this poetry actually just appeared while Rumi was in a state of trance, in a state of whirling. Whirling being the meditation in movement that Rumi used to practice. And the poetry would just flow, and his students seated next to him, trying to write and trying to keep up with the words flowing out. Even when Rumi died in the year 1273, he still composed a last poem on his deathbed. And they say when he left his physical body and his body was carried through the streets of Konya, it was not only the Muslims who joined his funeral processions, it was also the Christians and the Jews. And the Muslims were reading from the Quran, the Christians were reading verses or psalms from the Bible, and the Jews, the rabbi of the Jews, was reciting from the Torah. And after this procession, the Sultan, the Seljuk Sultan at that time, he called the faith leaders of the Christians and the Jews to his court and asked them, why did you do that? After all, he was a Muslim teacher. So why did you go and, you read from the Bible and read from the Torah? And the Christian and the Jews replied, because he made Jesus come alive for us. He made Moses come alive for us. He was Jesus, the Jesus of our age. So that was really, first of all, a testimony to the spiritual greatness of Rumi, and also for how really his teachings and his vision ultimately, although he's firmly rooted in Islam, ultimately transcended all borders of any denominations or different faith groups. So just a few more words about his poetry. There is a paradox around Sufi poetry, which is Sufi poets and Rumi, they are trying to find words to express the wordless. And that's why sometimes actually Rumi, he has some verses where he complains and he says, all these rhymes and meters, it's killing me. I just want to be silent. And actually in many of his poems, in the last verse, he says, hush, be silent, because this is not it. Whatever you've been hearing from me, whatever verses, this is not it. So we always have to remember that those poems are only pointers. They are only pointers towards God, towards the truth. But ultimately that truth is wordless, is formless. The two main works of Rumi, the Divan Shams and the Masnavi, they are two different collections of poetry. The Divan Shams is a very ecstatic work of poetry. So you have a lot of love poetry there, ecstasy, lots of imagery from the natural world, talking about spring and the flowers and the trees and the birds. And many of these poems, they have a very beautiful rhythm. So you can actually, when you hear the poem in Persian, for example, there's one poem that starts like this. Morde bodam zinde shodam dawlat ishq omad o man dawlat poyande shodam. So there's already a kind of a dance rhythm. So you can imagine how Rumi was whirling and in that rhythm, the poetry was coming. Whereas the Masnavi, the other big work of Rumi, is more of a map of the spiritual journey of the human being. It's a didactic work, a work of Sufi teaching. So it gives you a roadmap really of the spiritual path through storytelling. So lots of stories and lots of examples also from the bazaar, but always with a deep spiritual meaning inside. And this poetry, America, the US being the best example. So Rumi has been a best-selling poet, a New York Times best-selling poet, really showing us that even 750 years after his physical death, this poetry is still speaking very deeply to us. And that is because Rumi wrote his poetry when he had already reached the highest state of human spiritual achievement, of completion, as the Sufis would say. They call it the insane kamil, the complete human being. And there are also Sufi poets who wrote while they were still on the journey. So they wrote at a let's say, more premature stage on the spiritual path. But for Rumi, the poetry was really the fruits of his complete life. So that's why when we read his poetry, especially in the original, because you also have a transmission with the sound of the language and the beauty of the imagery, which of course gets completely lost in translation, that just creates a space for the reader or for the listener that transforms your soul as you listen to this poetry or as you read. There is an alchemy, there is a beautiful magic happening, and you can feel that this poetry it doesn't come from just a human plane. It's really has that direct connection. I just want to add with one important piece. I just want to finish with one important piece because I think this is very important before I pass it on to my dear wife. Which is how Rumi is read nowadays. And I'm sure all of you have read poetry of Rumi here and there. And there's this tendency nowadays to cut off Rumi from his spiritual roots, from his roots in Islam. And this has especially happened in English translation. So a lot of the Rumi poetry that you get to read in the West is not actually, are not translations of Rumi, but they are versions of Rumi. So what happened is, in the 19th century, I think, you had a famous Oxford scholar, or Cambridge, I think, Mr. Nicholson, who did the first very accurate translation of Rumi's poetry. But his language was totally boring and academic and not a pleasure to read. And then there was a second movement happening, I believe in the 80s and the 90s of the last century, 20th century, starting in the US with poets like Robert Bly and especially Coleman Barks, who took Nicholson's translation of Rumi and rewrote the poetry in their own style. And I think this has two sides to it. There is a beautiful side to it because it helped popularize Rumi and made him immensely known around the world, and made people curious about Sufism. But also what happened in those translations is that you can't really find the original metaphors anymore. You can't find that connection to Islam anymore. A lot of actually the spiritual background where Rumi comes from is getting lost. And I just want to show you one example for what happened to a very famous poem, that many of you probably know. And it's the famous poem, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense." So this is Coleman Barks' version of Rumi. The translation of Rumi would sound like this: "Beyond Islam and unbelief, there is a desert plain. For us, there is a passion in the midst of that expanse. The knower of God who reaches there will prostrate in prayer. For there is neither Islam nor unbelief, nor any where in that place." So here you have the image, for example, of the prostration of the Islamic prayer, right? Bringing your forehead to the ground. So these layers get lost. And of course, then you also have a lot of people saying nowadays that Rumi had nothing to do with Islam. And this is, of course, also connected to the negative image we have of Islam, especially since 9/11. The media coverage around Islam has been very much focused on some very extreme manifestations of Islam and violence, unfortunately, but then ignoring, of course, the spirituality and also the kindness, the hospitality, and all the beauty that exists in Islamic countries, and that I was very fortunate to discover on my travels. So I just want to leave you with this this grain of salt, to just be aware that Rumi comes actually from a whole background and from a whole tradition that has grown and that is deeply deeply rooted in the beauty of the Islamic faith. Yes. I want just closing with one last poem where Rumi says, Hosele omram in sesochan bish nist, khom bodam, pochte shodam, suchtam. And it translates, the summary of my life is only 3 words. I was raw, I became cooked, and I burnt myself. I was raw, I cooked, and I burnt. So that's the image of the journey that Rumi took, and that all of us, I think, are taking in one way or the other. So with that,
We can watch the video.
oh yeah, but I'm
Where we
I'm just looking at the time. You know, we are already.
I think it's good to show it to have a sense of Konya and his shrine.
Okay, so we'll just share a brief video for you, so you also get a break from listening
exactly.
to too many words. We'll just show you a little video from Rumi's shrine. So for those who haven't been to Konya and to Turkey, just beam yourself there for a moment. So this is a video from Rumi's mausoleum in Konya, as we visited it last summer. And at the end, there is also a short, but we don't have to show that. The interview, we'll just leave that, I think, in the interest of time.
We can share the YouTube link for those who would like to watch the whole thing, right?
Yes,
or we can email it.
Exactly, we'll share it later, yeah. So let's see. How can I do this? This video is not here. Share screen. Yeah, here we go. And we quickly jump to this part here.
Yeah. After this. Maybe the last one as well.
Okay.
So this is an invitation for all of you to come to Turkey and experience it. Okay, so now after hearing the information and theory about Rumi and his work, let's taste it. So I would like to read the first 18 couplets of Masnavi. It is the story of the reed flute. This instrument, for those who haven't seen it, so it's a very important symbol in the Masnavi. And the first 18 couplets is the heart of the whole work, is the key. And it is giving us the map of homecoming, how to reach our essence and origin. And I would like to read you the whole thing. Listen to the reed and the tale it tells, how it sings of separation. Ever since they cut me from the reed bed, my veil has caused men and women to weep. I want a heart that is torn open with longing, so that I might share the pain of this love. Whoever has been parted from his source longs to return to that state of union. At every gathering, I play my lament. I am a friend to both happy and sad. Each befriended me for his own reasons, yet none searched out the secrets I contain. My secret is not different than my lament, yet this is not for the senses to perceive. The body is not hidden from the soul, nor is the soul hidden from the body. And yet the soul is not for everyone to see. This flute is played with fire, not with wind. Whoever doesn't have this fire, may he be nothing. It is the fire of love that inspires the flute. It is the ferment of love that completes the wine. The reed is a comfort to all estranged lovers. Its music tears our veils away. Have you ever seen a poison or antidote like the reed? Have you seen a more intimate companion and lover? It sings the path of blood. It relates the passion of Majnun. Only to the senseless is the sense confided. Does the tongue have any pattern but the ear? Our days grow more unseasonable. These days which mix grief and pain. But if the days that remain a few, let them go, it doesn't matter. But you remain, for nothing is as pure as you are. All but the fish quickly have their fill of this water, and the day is long without his daily bread. The raw does not understand the state of the ripe, and so my words will be brief. So, there is a lot to talk about. We have limited time, so I will just try to give a taste of what Rumi is trying to tell us, to the seeker. So, as you realize here, the first invitation for the seeker, for the listener, is to listen In Islam, in the Sufi tradition, the act of deep listening is very much at the center. And as Mariam invited us, not listening with the ears of the head, but listening with the ears of the heart, listening from the chest, with great presence, without judgments, without filters, just being present for those who are speaking, or for the text, for the poem. So we are invited to listen with the ears of our heart to the reed, which symbolizes the human being, the soul. And it is sharing a tale with us. What is this tale about? It is about our source and how we are separated from our real home, where our souls were together, and now we are remembering each other, right? But once we were all together in this unity, in this one dot, which was the divine self and divine essence. And then what happened? This divine essence, this divine being, I would like to call she wanted to be loved. She wanted to be known. That's why she started manifesting herself in different forms, in different wavelengths, in different colors, in different cultures and faiths and countries. So when we came here in this body and in this material world, we somehow forgot where we came from. We lost our contact with our souls. And the soul, it starts weeping because it feels estranged here. It feels in exile. It doesn't fully belong to the material world. So the reed flute, our souls, they are singing the tale of separation, hoping that maybe with these tales, when we listen to this tale, we will remember the reality and we will try to reach that, where we come from. And in the second couplet, the reed bed, it symbolizes the gathering of the souls, our original place. And here the image of weeping together, man and woman together weeping. It is actually pointing out to the act of grieving, grief. Nowadays we hear a lot about the grief work, right? And how essential it is for the human soul. And we are experiencing lots of problems in the present world. And it is very important to really recognize the pain in us and to meet them from a compassionate, from a loving place. And then tell the stories of our pains, to share them in circles, like the circle, and make the pain less. And when you feel your pain, you really open your heart, you become vulnerable, and you stop pretending to be a strong and free individual. And you recognize that you're actually a very simple human being with lots of troubles and with heartache. And it brings humility to your heart. And from this humility, you can really start sharing love with humanity, and you can really start tasting the divine love and what it really means. And I really love the fourth couplet. Whoever has been parted from his source longs to return to that state of union. This is the summary of the Sufi tradition. The whole thing, the whole path is about returning to the state of union. This is our origin, this is our real home. And our guide is our longing, the longing of the heart. And it's a very feminine state, the state of longing. And the fifth couplet, what is important here is the reed flute, the soul, does not discriminate between people. It is including everyone, both happy and sad, sharing his story with everyone. It also means to stay present with every state we have. Maybe we are feeling very down, maybe we are feeling very depressed, and sometimes we are feeling very joy. It doesn't matter. Are we being a good host to, first of all, our emotions and feelings? Can we stay with ourselves? Can we help ourselves? And in this way, when you know the real worth of yourself, then you can really recognize the real worth of truth, because you are not separate from the truth. You are not separate from the divine. a human being is the greatest manifestation of the divine truth, as Sufis say. Yes. And when you are in a real friendship, the true seekers, you start discovering the secrets of the hearts, and you are sharing them with each other through music, through nice conversations like we are having right now. And you mirror each other. You help each other to remember your true home. You cannot do this alone. Sufi says you cannot walk on the Sufi path alone. Maybe you will fail a lot, but when you have companions, then there will be great help. And that's the importance of a community building, as we are talking about it most of the time right now in this age. And here we see that the body and the soul, they are not hidden from each other. And in Islam, actually, none is more important than the other. The important thing is to put them in balance, body and soul, the perfect union of feminine and masculine, material world and spiritual world. Yes, I mean, I want to share a lot with you, but maybe next time. So just sharing the real important stuff. And of course, there is love. And what inspires flute is the love. And what is this love? It's not the romantic image of love that the modernity brings, but this love is the longing for the real home. It is the moving force in us. Because of this love, we are seeking the truth. Yeah. And the sound of the reed flute, it is the same sound, but to some it is poison, and to some it is antidote. Which means if I am in the receptivity and in deep listening, then I can really make use of this divine guidance. But if I close myself, and if I try to understand this path and this poem with my own assumptions and with my own conditionings, then I won't understand the reality. I will just maybe put a shadow on it, and I'll be far from the real meaning. So what is important is, as Marianne said, trying to empty ourselves first of all, like the reed flute, like the how is it made? How is it created? First of all, it is cut from the reed flute, so it is perfect symbology. Reed bed, sorry. So it's perfect symbology of the soul, right? We are also cut from our original place and sent to the world, to the material reality. And after it is cut, it is emptied inside with fire, with the fire of love. So it is like our bodies being emptied from false assumptions and illusions, so that the divine can manifest itself as freely as it can. Because every one of us, we are carrying this divine information already. We don't have to attain it from outside. We already have it buried. But what is important is to remember it and to revive it. And the holes are made with the fire. It has 7 holes, and Sufi says it represents the 7 holes of the head. We also have openings here. So there are great symbologies to look at. Maybe you can make a research later. Yeah, that is all I can share right now, I think, regarding the time, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have any questions, we will have a session for that, so you can note down already.
Maybe just one small piece to add. So these first 18 verses that we just read together in the Mevlevi tradition, which is the Sufi order, which was founded based on Rumi's teachings, they say that you need 40 years to understand these 18 verses. So sorry to tell you, but we won't solve it all in 2 hours.
It's just the beginning. And I have been working with this text for almost 8 years. It was my bachelor and master's thesis. And I didn't plan it, it just came to me, which is another story. But I'm very honored to be able to work with them, still trying to understand and embody, of course, and put it into practice.
Yeah.
Marian and Aslano, did you want to do just a few questions, just to let people know? I believe that some of this material will be available after the call on Monday or so. I'll be sending an email with some information. I think you mentioned the video and perhaps a copy of the 18 stanzas that you read. And someone else was asking about your bios. I'll go ahead and send those too, among other things, upcoming events and whatnot. But at this time, does anybody want to, are you guys okay with just a few questions? Probably about 3, because we need to do some music and poetry next. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so does anybody have a question? If you would, raise your virtual hand so I'm sure to see it. And I see that Deborah Gibson has a question. So Deborah, if you would unmute yourself and let us know what you're thinking, that would be great.
I was wondering, who is Majnun? Is that a person in the 13th couplet?
Doesn't matter. Layla and Majnun is a very famous love story from the history. So Majnun represents the perfect lover.
It's kind of the Islamic version of Romeo and Juliet. So Majnun would be Romeo in this case.
Yeah.
But he's also the metaphor, right? For the
seeker.
For the seeker.
For the seeker.
Yeah.
Did they both die at the end, like in Romeo and Juliet?
Does he? Yes, he does die, I think.
Yeah, he reaches Fana, which means he dies in the presence of God. He attains the unity.
Yeah.
Like the drop meeting the ocean.
Which is, of course, again, a symbol for the death of the ego in the divine love, just dissolving in divine love. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? If you would just raise your computer hand so I can make sure I see you. I have a quick comment. Marianne, do people know that you're German? That you're a former German Protestant, right? Or you are a German Protestant?
A former German Protestant. I love that.
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah.
I really sometimes I don't really know what to call myself because
Right.
I have I just feel there is a kind of a spiritual soup I grew up with,
Yes.
with many beautiful ingredients. And one of it is the Protestant heritage, my grandfather being a Protestant minister. But also my parents who are here with us today, and they came a little late, so I couldn't make my dedication, but I actually would like to dedicate this call to my father because it's his birthday today. And here they are. Yes. So yes, I grew up in Germany and I have this Protestant element in my family, but also my parents are on the path of yoga and meditation. So we have a deep connection to Indian spirituality. And then Islam came into the mix later when I started traveling, and I felt this deep connection. And as the Sufis say, actually, we just remember. So it felt like I'm remembering something in this tradition. It felt so familiar to me.
Yes.
And that's somehow what triggered this whole exploration, and also made me actually meet Aslanur. So yeah.
I just asked because when you were mentioning that you were feeling out of place in your first story, I wondered if people knew about your background, that you were not
Right.
born in the region. There is a question coming in through the chat, and that's from Shruti. And Shruti asks, what is a good way to read Rumi in English? Are there any accurate translations with the Islamic imagery?
Yes, there are quite a few. And we'll put that in the email. I think we'll make a nice list, so you can look up different sources.
One or two
Okay.
maybe you can mention right now.
Yeah, I can put one or two in the
Yeah.
chat if you like, and then we'll also list them in the email.
Perfect. Thank you. Are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask, whether in the chat or elsewhere? Okay. I think we're good. Right. Let me double check here. I don't want to leave anybody out. Okay, I think we're good to go. So I'm going to go back on mute, turn it back over to Marian and Aslinor. We're going to have a little music and a little poetry from both Marian and Hugh. So here we go. I'm going on mute.
I'm still with the chat. I'm just posting this here. 1 second. Okay. Yes. So I will start with a piece of music, and then we'll go to the 4 poems that we would like to recite together with you. And I brought my tar, which is an Iranian lute that I learned to play during my university days in Tehran. And it's one of the instruments that is often used to accompany recitals of Rumi's poetry. So,
The question came maybe quickly.
Another question?
Yeah.
Could you say something about Rumi's death? Was he really thrown? The story with the water well. That's what they say about Shams, not about Rumi. Rumi had a natural death. Shams, some people, there's this theory that he was murdered, but then it's also not clear. There are some people said he went to India, being a wandering dervish. Others said that he died in Iran, and there is a grave actually in Iran. So we have lots of stories around that. Yeah, but Rumi died on his bed in Konya. Yes, so this... No, the first one without drum. Yeah. I'll just play a little bit so you can hear the instrument, and then I will try to recite a few lines of the poem that Aslinur just read to you in English, but in Farsi, in Persian. بشنو از نی چون حکایت می کند از جدایی ها شکایت می کند کس نیستان تا مرا ببریدند در نفیرم مرد و زن نالیدند سینه خواهم شرح از فراق تا بگویم شرح درد اشتیاق هر کسی که دور ماند از اصل خویش باز جوید روزگار وصل خویش هر کسی که دور ماند از اصل خویش باز جوید روزگار وصل خویش So I hope the sound of the instrument was clear. We don't have a professional sound studio here, music studio.
Maybe it's good to show your instrument a little bit. There is a request in the chat.
Ah,
Yeah.
yes.
While you are playing, maybe we can.
So this is the, it's, I believe that the wood is mulberry, it's from a mulberry tree. And it's covered with, I think, sheep, probably sheep skin or sheep stomach even. So it's unfortunately, I'm vegetarian, but it's my instrument's unfortunately not vegetarian. So that's the traditional way to build it. And these are the, well, you have the frets here, and yeah, you see all the little also the decorative elements like a sun here. So it's a whole art to create this instrument. And yeah, it's called tar. Tar meaning string in Persian, simply string. And you know the sitar, right? Sitar of the Indian music. Sitar means, si means 30 and tar is strings. So 30 strings because the sitar has 30 strings. Yeah. So I think we will move to the poems. So we chose a few poems, and let's see, I'm pulling this out here. Where did I save it? And I will be reading first the Persian original, and then you will kindly read the translation for us. And then the idea was to just have a very quick breakout room session. And are we good in time, Bonnie? Can we do the breakouts?
Let's see how long the poetry takes. I think probably yes. So
Okay. Great.
we'll fire.
Great. Okay. So let's start with this one. Sorry, I have so many windows open here. It's okay, here's the poetry. And yes. A poem from the Masnavi, the third book of the Masnavi. هر کجا دردی دوا آنجا رود، هر کجا فقری نوا آنجا رود، هر کجا مشکل جواب آنجا رود، هر کجا کشتی است آب آنجا رود. آب کم جو، تشنگی آور به دست، تا بجوشد آب از بالا و پست.
And in English, where there is pain, cures will come. Where there is poverty, wealth will follow. Where there are questions, answers will be given. Where there are ships, water will flow. Spend less time seeking water and acquire thirst. Then water will gush from above and below.
Thank you. Let me go to the next one. گفت معشوق این همه کردی ولیک، گوش بگشا پهن و اندریاب نیک. کانچه اصل عشق است و ولاست، آن نکردی این چه کردی فرهاست. گفتش آن عاشق بگو که آن اصل چیست، گفت اصلش مردن است و نیستی است.
The beloved said, "You have done all these things, but open your ears wide and listen well. You have not accomplished the root of love and devotion. What you have done is the branches." The lover said, "Tell me, what is the root?" She said, "To die and become non-existent."
هرچه گویم عشق را شرح و بیان، چون به عشق آیم خجل گردم از آن. گرچه تفسیر زبان روشنگر است، لیک عشق بی زبان روشنتر است. چون قلم اندر نوشتن می شتافت، چون به عشق آمد قلم بر خود شکافت. عقل در شرحش چو خر در گل بخفت، شرح عشق و عاشقی هم عشق گفت. آفتاب آمد دلیل آفتاب، گر دلیلت باید از وی رو متاب.
However I explain love, when I come to love, I am ashamed of that. Although the commentary of the tongue makes clear, yet silent love is clearer. While the pen was hastily writing, it broke apart as soon as it came to love. Trying to explain love, the intellect fell down in the mud like a donkey. Love and being a lover can only be explained by love. The sun is sun's proof. If you need proof, then turn not your face away from it.
من غلام قمرم، غیر قمر هیچ مگو. پیش من جز سخن شمع و شکر هیچ مگو. سخن رنج مگو، جز سخن گنج مگو. ور از این بی خبری رنج مبر هیچ مگو. دوش دیوانه شدم، عشق مرا دید و بگفت. آمدم نعره مزن، جامه مدر هیچ مگو. گفتم ای عشق من از چیز دگر می ترسم. گفت آن چیز دگر نیست دگر هیچ مگو. من به گوش تو سخنهای نهان خواهم گفت. سر بجنبان که بله، جز که به سر هیچ مگو. قمری جان صفتی در ره دل پیدا شد. در ره دل چه لطیف است سفر هیچ مگو. گفتم ای دل چه مه است این؟ دل اشارت می کرد که نه اندازه توست این، بگذر هیچ مگو. گفتم این روی فرشته است عجب یا بشر است. گفت این غیر فرشته است و بشر هیچ مگو. گفتم این چیست بگو، زیر و زبر خواهم شد. گفت می باش چنین زیر و زبر هیچ مگو. ای نشسته تو در این خانه پر نقش و خیال. خیز از این خانه برو رخت ببر هیچ مگو. گفتم ای دل پدری کن، نه که این وصف خداست. گفت این هست ولی جان پدر هیچ مگو.
I serve that moonlight beauty. Say nothing to me unless it's about her. Speak nothing of sorrow. Speak nothing other than sorrow. Last night I became love crazed. Love saw me and said, I've come, don't shout, say nothing. I said, love, I'm afraid of something else. Love said, there is nothing else, say nothing. Let me whisper secrets in your ear, say nothing. I said, what a beauty! Are you an angel or a human? Love said, not an angel, not a human. Say nothing. I said, what is this? Say it. Love said, stay like this. Say nothing. I said, my heart, isn't this God's quality? Love said, yes, my child, but hush. Say nothing.
Trebanar mak bezan mak bezan تا رو باز آید به تن چون زنی بر جان شمس دین تبریزی بزن چون زنی بر جان شمس دین تبریزی بزن مطربا بهر خدا مطربا بهر خدا تو غیر شمس دین مگو مطربا بهر خدا تو غیر شمس دین مگو شمس دین و شمس دین و شمس دین میگوی و بس شمس دین و شمس دین و شمس دین میگوی و بس تا ببینی مردگان رقصان شده اندر کفن تا ببینی مردگان رقصان شده اندر کفن مطربا نرمک بزن مطربا نرمک بزن تا رو باز آید به تن شمس دین و شمس دین و شمس دین میگوی و بس شمس دین و شمس دین و شمس دین میگوی و بس تا ببینی مردگان رقصان شده اندر کفن تا ببینی مردگان رقصان شده اندر کفن Thank you. And now it's time for the breakout rooms.
Thank you. That was so beautiful, all of you. I'm still really struck by Say Nothing. How do you describe the nature of reality and the nature of our place in it? It's really wonderful. So what we're going to do now, we're going to say something instead of saying nothing. And we're going to invite you to be in breakout rooms. We're going to place you in rooms, and you're going to get a little message popping up on your screen. And when it says, do you want to join the breakout room, go ahead and click. I believe it just says yes. You'll see it's a bright blue button. I don't remember what it says, but you'll know it when you see it. And we're going to be in there for about 10 minutes. And really, the opportunity in the breakout room is just to let your voice be heard, to speak about what moved you in this presentation, or what moved you in the poetry, or just where you are right now, how you're feeling about this. And Marianne Aspliner, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's great. See what comes up, what was moved, what's alive. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and, am I putting them in the breakout rooms? Yes?
Yeah, I've been trying to find the option. I couldn't find it. Could you check?
Oh, there it is. Okay, I just found it. Okay. So you guys, I'm new at this. Let's see what happens, okay? You'll have about 10 minutes just to speak about where you are.
And it's groups
What's
of
up for
3?
you?
Is that what we said?
Groups
of
of, I'm working on groups of 3. Some of you will be 4 if you're sharing a computer, okay? So here we go. One sec, I just want to check. Okay, here we go. Wait, give me one sec, hang on. Wait. Whoops. Hey, Marianne and Eslener, I messed it up. I made huge groups, but let me, I just tried to close it.
There are still some people in the big room.
Yeah, I know. I made the groups, instead of doing
too
groups,
big.
I made 3 groups of like 12. So I closed it, and closing in 29 seconds, and then I'm going to do it again.
No problem. We are all.
That's my plan.
Yes. It doesn't give us the option as co-hosts to open
Okay,
breakout groups. So I think you
closing in 14 seconds.
yeah, you need to do it.
Thank you for doing it both in Arabic and in English, because it's beautiful to hear the vibration of the actual words, and then it's wonderful to have a beautiful English translation.
Especially with Yu's voice.
Yeah, did a fantastic job.
Bonnie,
Yeah,
our breakout room has the little timer on it saying it's going to end in like 30 seconds.
yes, because
Okay.
I messed up.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay.
It's harsh. Everybody's going back to different rooms. I'm ripping people out of their rooms and putting them into new ones. Isn't that
We love
super
it.
fun?
We love you, Bonnie.
Thank you. So it's 11:41. I know some people are not joining rooms for whatever reason, but that's okay.
Yes.
So
I'm just gonna step away for a second.
and the time here. Okay. Sometimes people walk away and don't realize that they're in breakout rooms, but we're good.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Yeah. Some people will have, it looks like Diane Sanson's all by herself. I'm going to throw her in someplace. Move to, you guys did a fantastic job. Just beautiful.
Yeah, we co-created the experience. I'm very happy.
Yeah, just so beautiful. Thank you.
Fikren, fikren durabilecek olanlar. İyi akşamlar, ben de teşekkür ediyorum. Fikren, omuz omuza, el birlikte.
Okay, so Shahin Cengiz is a he's a good.
I just put him on mute because it was staticky. Hope that's okay.
He doesn't know English, but still he wants to be
Oh,
a Turkish friend.
oh, that's. Do you want to speak to him? Go ahead.
I wrote something to him in the chat section saying thank you for coming, and I think he unmuted himself to say, "Yeah, I'm happy."
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah.
I think Susan's microphone is not working. She wrote in the chat.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you, Aslan. Can you speak into the mic a little more?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
So Susan wrote in the chat her sound is not working, so that's why she.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds cool.
So we are good.
Yes, I think we're really good. Let's see, we started about 11:40, 41 or so with the little kerfluffle. So at around 11:50, I'll send a little warning.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, I'm going to excuse myself for just a moment. I will be right back, okay?
Free.
Aklılı Hanım.
So Marianne and Asliner, are you there?
Yes,
We are here.
we're here.
Okay, I'm getting ready to close the rooms. They're
Okay.
coming back.
Hmm.
Okay, mid-sentence. I always feel so badly doing that.
Should we ask people if they have like last questions?
Sure. Yeah, we're okay. It's 11:51. We're okay. And
But we have,
yeah, and then we'll do a few last questions and then the final announcements, and then you guys will do a closing prayer. Does that sound good?
yes, great. And but
Okay.
first the sharings, right, from the groups.
Yes, yes. First, sharings or questions. Yeah. Who's your dad? Which one is your dad?
Maybe we can give the microphone to him if he wants to share something
Maybe
for his birthday.
Oh, is he there? He's actually physically with you. I thought he might, when you said he's here, I thought you meant he was on the call.
No, he is on the call. He's not here physically. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Christian.
Oh, okay.
Chris, short
Oh.
Chris. Yeah.
Chris. Okay. All right.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Mary, I have to go to get to another meeting, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for bringing this together. It's been
Oh.
absolutely delightful. I
I'm
just
so
really appreciate
glad.
it. Okay.
So glad you enjoyed it. We're just doing a few questions at the end, and then the rest of the information you'll get in an email. So you're not really missing out here.
Okay.
So good luck at your other meeting, and I'll see you tomorrow. Okay.
I just want to say to Marianne and Asliner, have I got your name right?
Yes, perfect.
The only Turkish word I know, Tekashur Adarim.
Did you hear? Yeah.
Tekasharu. What does that mean?
That's an important one.
Tekashur Adarim means I thank you very much.
Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah. It looks like just about everybody is back. So we're going to have just a few moments to glean any last questions or any last shares if you'd like to. So if you're not speaking, go ahead and put yourself on mute and then raise your hand if you have a question. And I see that Lynn has her hand up. So Lynn, let's hear from you. Let's have you unmute and we'll hear from you.
Yeah, we had a wonderful trio of ladies, and we were from Turkey, Camarillo, and Texas. And I brought up the fact that I had recently come across the poem "The Guest House" by Rumi, and so Gina read it, and we shared about that, and it was lovely. So I was just wondering if they might want to expand on when he wrote that, any insights into that poem, because that was all of our favorite poem from Rumi, and we didn't hear it today. So that's it. Thank you.
Shall we maybe first collect sharings and then in the end we respond?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Bonnie, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
So we're going to hear from Deborah now. And Deborah, if you could unmute and speak, that would be great.
Wondering, what is the original language that Rumi's poems were written in? Was it Farsi? Was it Aramaic?
Okay. That's on our list of questions. Then they'll address them all at the end.
Thank you.
And then, is it Elif? Yes. Okay, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to honor your presence, my blood friends, Marianne and Noor, and by saying thank you for sharing this delightful treasure with this heartfelt words.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
Let's see, I have one.
Diane, okay. Diane and then Andrea, or Andrea's friend there. Okay, so let's hear from Diane first. And Diane, you're going to want to unmute.
Now, am I unmuted?
You are. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Well, in our small group, I was very touched, and I'm not sure I can pronounce your name right, Elif, who Elif, thank you, who read a beautiful poem on grief, and I asked her if she could send it to us. And anyway, thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Diane. Perfect. And then Andreas Square, somebody in there wants to speak? Yes?
Yes.
I
wonder, since Rumi emphasized his longing to come home, I wonder if he also said something, added something about collective coming home and being supported, coming home being supported by the group. The whole is more than the addition of the parts.
Thank you. And as I said, we're going to, Marian and Aslin are going to take all this in and answer it in a bulk. Okay. Anybody else have a question? If you could raise your hand. If you raise your computer hand, I might be able to see you a little bit easier. Oh, looks like Brock has his hand up. Okay. Brock, did you want to say something? You're going to want to unmute and speak. There you go.
Yeah, there was a thing in that poem that, where there are questions, answers will come, and where there is pain, healing will come. And that perhaps we should cease seeking for water and allow ourselves to be thirsty. I hope they might say something about that. That seems to be the heart, the longing,
Yes. Thank you.
The yearning.
Folks, I think that's probably all we have time for in terms of questions, because I want to go ahead and turn that over to Marian and Asliner. Did you get all that, you guys? You're good to jump in. What I wrote down was Rumi's Guest House, the original language that these poems were created or composed in, an idea of collective coming home in support of the group, and also a commentary on the idea that we allow ourselves to be thirsty. If I left anything out, please do let me know. And then I'll turn it over to you guys. I'm going to go back on mute.
Okay, let's go. So the guest house poem, yes, that's a very beloved Rumi poem. And I can't say when it was written. It's part of the Masnavi. So not the Divan-e-Shams, which is the love poetry, but the Masnavi, which is the didactic poetry meant to teach seekers on the Sufi path. And I would have to look up to see where it comes in the Masnavi. So the Masnavi is actually, it's not a linear book. So it doesn't follow a certain structure with chapters. Rather, it is a story in a story in a story. So Rumi starts one story and then suddenly jumps to something else. And from that, he comes to something completely different. And after 100 pages, he comes back to the original story.
So it moves in cycles.
Yeah, it's a very intuitive book. And somewhere, I guess, in one of these stories, he puts in this guest house poem, which became so famous in the version of Coleman Barks. But again, I assume if we compare it to the original, again, probably there would be places that changed. So what I can try maybe in the email that we sent after this call to pull out the translation that is closest and maybe then put it next to the popular version, which we all know. So maybe that can help. Yeah. And yes, the language of Rumi's poetry is Farsi, Persian. So those are two names for the same language, Farsi or Persian. And Persian is what they call an Indo-German or Indo-Germanic language. So it's related also to German, to Sanskrit, It's one of those languages. It's very different from Arabic, actually. Often people confuse because, you kind of think that the Middle East is all, Arab, but it's not that way. The Persians have a completely different culture and language. So Rumi's poetry is Persian, and the Persian language is very rich in imagery, full of metaphors, and has a beautiful music. I think maybe some of it came through when I was reading the poems in Persian. And it's really made for poetry. It just lends itself to beauty and verses and aesthetics. So that's why I think we can probably say that the largest body of spiritual poetry, or the largest collection of spiritual poetry of mankind, was written in the Persian language. So only Rumi, if you take only Rumi, he wrote 70,000 verses of poetry. So that's a huge number. And then, of course, you have so many other poets like Hafiz and Sadi and so on, the ones I mentioned, Omar Khayyam. Yeah, so it's beautiful, and I think one of the greatest gifts in my life was to study this language, and yeah, just open up a different world. Then the question about longing to come home. Bonnie, you just asked who's my father. This question came from my father. So
I hope we can gift him a nice answer.
Yes, on his birthday. Yeah, the Sufi path is a path of community, and well, when you speak about, let's say, mystical experience, because they also call Sufism Islamic mysticism, it brings up this image of somehow being alone on the path and waiting for something to happen. It's kind of a little bit of a solitary thing. You go and you retreat and you wait for a mystical experience. But the Sufi path is actually not like that. It's really a path of community. And that's why, first of all, Rumi also had a community around him. And also there are poems where he speaks about that, about actually the mirroring that happens in communities, and how that supports our spiritual growth. Rumi did not found a Sufi order. He never actually founded a Sufi order, but his son, when Rumi died, was the one who came up with this order that is called Mevlevi now in Turkey, Maulawi in Arabic. And that order was founded, so it's like order is a very Christian word, like you have in the monasteries, the orders of the monks. I don't know if it doesn't apply fully to the Sufi path, but you have these groups, also called brotherhoods, that formed around teachers, and they passed on their teachings through many generations. And this community aspect was always very important there. So serving also in the community. You want to add something maybe to this? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there is a saying of Prophet Muhammad, believer is the mirror of the believer. So we are mirroring each other, and all we are trying to do is to discover our true essence, right? And when we are alone, we cannot see it. We cannot reflect on it. And the easiest way is to find a real companion, real friend on this path, and really watch our beauty in the eyes of the friends and witness each other and support each other. It's not really about retreating on the top of the hill and meditating. It's more like being in the interaction. And Sufi says you can find God in the society. Yeah.
There's a beautiful expression, retreating in the crowd. So Sufis seek to retreat in the crowd. You have that in many traditions. I think is it in the Hindu path, they say, head in the forest and hands in society. So it's basically expressing the same idea, the same ideal that once you have reached your that level of perfection, or you have completed yourself, you come back and you serve in society among people. Yeah. And do you want to say something about seeking the water and thirst?
Oh yeah. It's a very beautiful question. Thank you for asking that. So Sufis, they say love means your thirst for becoming complete. This is the definition of love. And generally, what we are trying to do is acquire something from the outside world, right? Acquiring knowledge and theory and information. So this is the modern way of learning something or experiencing something. And it creates duality. There is me and there is the information outside. But on the Sufi path, there is unity. So you don't seek for something. You just become the place for that manifestation to unfold itself. Because you have everything inside. You have the whole world inside. You have this divine treasure in your heart. So what you can do is just to clean your heart, just to purify your body and soul to become a pure place for it to manifest itself. This is acquiring thirst. This is the receptivity. This is the feminine mode of being. And it's the surrender, which is expressed in the word of Islam. Islam, Muslim, it means the person who surrenders. Yeah. I think that's how we can summarize it.
Okay, I think we're almost ready to head out. Now, now that I have to speak, my dog is starting to gear up to bark. Give me 1 minute. Hang on. I think the mailman is coming, which is really exciting for them. It's their favorite thing. Okay, so we're first of all, big thank you to all of you, not only to Marian and Aslanur, but for everybody who expressed such great interest in this topic. It really expands my heart to know that there are so many people that are interested in learning about either your own faith, if you are Sufi, or learning about different faiths if you're not, or if you're like some of us who are kind of everything. In our center, in our spiritual center, we practice something that's called priceless pricing, which the gist of it is that spiritual teaching is priceless, and that there's no substitute for it, and it's probably the most important thing in the world. But we don't set a price on it as well. So if you'd like to make a donation, in a moment I'll put something in the chat window where you can make a donation if you like. And also when we send around the email, there'll be a donation button there. I wanted to let you know that 100% of the proceeds of your donations are going to support Marian and Aslanur in their joyful work of bringing greater clarity and greater wisdom to people who don't understand Sufism and Islam. As I said before in the introduction, there's a lot of misinformation about what Islam really is. And from what we've heard today, it truly is this beautiful path of community and introspection and love and kindness. So I just encourage you to give generously to support them, because they are doing such important work in the world as it is today. I just also wanted to say a word about the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. We bless all paths to spirit, and we do a lot of Rumi reading in our services. So if you'd ever like to attend the church, I'll send a copy of the website, and you can just check it out and see what we do. We're doing most of our stuff online at the moment on Facebook, but if you want to come to a live service, that's coming soon as well. And I think that's all I have to say. The rest I'll just include in the email. There's a class, another international class that I'm doing for Service Space, which is an international organization. It's on devotion. And that'll be in the email. And I'm going to pass it over to Marian and Aslanur to talk about what they're up to.
Yes, thank you so much, Bonnie. Maybe just a few announcements from us. So, well, first of all, thank you for coming, because as Rumi says, if there are no listeners, or he actually says, if there is no one to ask questions. And he even uses the image of the breast and the milk in the breast. So if there is no one to suckle, the milk will not flow.
Thank you for suckling. And thank you for your thirst. Thanks to you, the water is coming.
Yeah, so thank you really very much for giving us this opportunity. And there will be links in the email, but I also just want to type the link of my new website here into the chat, where if you sign up for the newsletter, if you want to learn more about Sufism, there will be more offerings in the future. So maybe some of you just feel like diving a little more into this path and this tradition. So, and also we would just love to hear from you, whatever was moved in you, or what you are doing in the world. There was not enough time for each of us to share, but please, and if it is just to say hi, here's my email address, and maybe also yours. I think that's it.
One more quick announcement. I know that there were some folks that just were sent this email, this link from friends. So you may not necessarily be on the email list that we have, but now you have Marianne's email address. So if for some reason you're not getting an email from me or the church, say by Monday evening, go ahead and reach out to us and we'll make sure that we cover you, okay? The other thing too, like if you invited someone, you can just forward the email to them or to anybody you want. We're going to take care of each other, okay? Again, thank you so much, and big thanks to Marianne and Aslinor, and they are going to close us with a prayer.
Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin Nabiyil Ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin Nabiyil Ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin Nabiyil Ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim.
Amen. May it be love, may it be peace, may it be health, and may it be completion. Hope to meet again, somewhere, sometime.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the meeting now. I hate to do it. Marian and Aslinor, perhaps you could log back in just a minute, and I'll just chat with you for a moment after we're done, okay? For the rest of you, I hope I meet again with all of you as well. So I will see you soon and hold you in my hearts forever. God bless.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Really.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Ineffable.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Good day to you.